Hello, friends. I hope everyone is doing well. I see some people are contacting us, trying to log in. They're having some problems, so we'll start in a minute or so. I'd like to welcome you back to another Kumi online session. Today, we're honored and blessed to have DCI with us. We have Manar Amleh. I have to admit, we haven't met in person or we haven't been in touch together. So Manar is a new person. So I'm looking forward to listening to her. Her camera is not working, but I hope soon she will, or she'll turn it on. I hope everyone is doing well, enjoying the month of November. Today is actually, it's a special day. Today is there is a special holiday in Palestine for all Palestinians. On this day, we remember it's the anniversary of our independence, or the Declaration of Independence. It's a letter that was written by Mahmoud Darwish, read by Yasser Arafat, launched from Algeria in 1989, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a beautiful letter that speaks about what is the vision of a Palestinian state. Building a state is more than just getting rid of the occupation. It is not that the Israeli occupation is only what defines us, but it's actually, there's more to it. It speaks about a diverse, free, democratic state of all its citizens, where everybody, regardless of their gender, religious or ethnic background, everybody is treated equal in front of the law. Unfortunately, we're far from this reality. I see more people are still joining us, but Manar, I just want to check, are you with us, Manar?
I am with you, yes.
Ahla wa sahla, Manar. It's a pleasure to have you with us. But
Thank you.
Before we start, I just want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. So if you don't want your face or your picture to appear online, please just turn off your camera feed. Otherwise, it will be recorded. We're sending it on YouTube for everyone who has registered to Kumi. And also it will be showing on the Kumi page, Facebook page. Sorry, I missed many of you who have been present in last week's session. I know many people liked it. Sorry, I wasn't with you, but maybe that's why you liked it, because I was not with you. But before we start, Manar, the tradition is that we have the speakers introduce themselves. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Manar Amleh. I work as an international advocacy officer at Defense for Children International Palestine. So today I'm going to be giving you an overview about the situation of Palestinian children and a brief about DCIP. So Omar, do I start?
I mean, that's a very short introduction for somebody working in an illegal organization. And
yeah, that's why I said I'm gonna briefly talk about DCI.
Okay. So Manar is from the southern part of the West Bank, from Hebron. And Manar, I mean, so many things are happening, but I mean, it's unfortunately so many children we know, even within our direct contact circles, are in prison or have been arrested in the past period. So please, we're all ears for you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about military detention in the Israeli military court system. I'm going to talk about other violations that Palestinian children have to encounter on a daily basis. But before I start, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Defense for Children International, for those who don't know about it. So we were founded back in 1991 as a legal aid group. We were basically giving legal services for Palestinian children who were detained, arrested, and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system But as time was going by, DCIP expanded its work. We started representing children in conflict with the Palestinian law. We started documenting grave violations against Palestinian children. And those violations mean fatalities, injuries, home demolition, violation on education, military detention, ill treatment and torture inside the Israeli military detention, and so on and so forth. We also started advocating for the Palestinian children in order to change the reality of the children, in order to bring justice for them. So we started working in the advocacy work, and this happens locally and internationally on both sides, where we raise the awareness of the general audience and where we also lobby on the official side. So we mainly have two programs. One is the accountability program, where we have the legal, the advocacy, and the documentation unit. And of course, the work of these units are complementary. And on the other hand, we have the protection program, where we aim at empowering Palestinian children in order for them to be the positive change they want to be for themselves and for their peers. Last year, DCIP was one of the 6 organizations that were designated as quote-unquote terrorist groups by Israeli authorities. What does the designation mean? It means that the people who are working at the organization are at the risk of being prosecuted in the Israeli military system. It means the offices can be raided, the assets can be confiscated, and this escalation happened in August of this year, where Israeli forces raided these offices of 7 organizations, confiscated everything, including the files of the clients, for instance, at DCIP. And then while it shut the doors, leaving a note stating that the organization is terrorist and it should be immediately and permanently shut down. We also can face, travel bans. But this is not the only thing. We always say we are at the risk. DCIP is at the risk of, being shut down for good. But this also means that our beneficiaries are at risk of not having the services we provide for them. Around 200 Palestinian children will not have free legal services. 200 Palestinian children, I mean, detained and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system. Around 150 Palestinian children who are in conflict on the Palestinian side, in conflict with the law on the Palestinian side, will also not have free access to legal services. We empower thousands of Palestinian children. So it's us plus those beneficiaries. And we're talking about a very vulnerable and fragile group of people. They are children and they face violations on a daily basis. Their future should be better. Their reality should be improved. But we're still doing our work. We're still here, even though Israel is, want to shut us for good. And us and other prominent Palestinian organizations, probably because we have a powerful presence internationally. And that's why we always make sure to talk about this. Israel claims that we are supporting, again, quote unquote, terrorist groups, but fails again and again to provide any evidence, because there is no evidence. And we need, as DCIP and other organizations designated, we need a concrete action from the international community in order for us to continue our work for the Palestinian people. Because now we're 6 organizations. If this passed, we don't know in the future how many other organizations that provide services for the Palestinian community will be shut. So I'm going to share my screen to start my presentation. Can you give me access?
You already have access, Manar.
Okay. Okay, so this is a footage of the latest raid that took place in August this year. And this is how they welded shut our door. This is the note. Okay, so if I want to tell you about the violations and the reality of the Palestinian children, I can tell you that all Palestinian children encounter a certain type of violation, and this differs where they live. For instance, if we take the children in the Gaza Strip, they have to deal with the ongoing blockade for 15 years now. And when we talk about the blockade, it's not only the restriction of movement, but it also affects every aspect of their lives. It makes the poverty rates so high in the Gaza Strip. People cannot have access to clean water. They cannot have access to power. There are power outages usually in the Gaza Strip. Also it affects, the medical quality, the medical services quality in the Gaza Strip. So as a result of the blockade, there are certain medical services that cannot be provided in the Gaza Strip, where patients have to have the treatment outside the Gaza Strip. And this is also another issue because these people need medical referrals, and the procedures of the medical referrals for the Palestinians, including children in the Gaza Strip, are very complicated and slow, where it sometimes results in people dying while waiting for the permits. These are 3 Palestinian children. We wrote a piece about them this year. They all died while waiting for the permits. Some of them were actually in the West Bank. They received the permit, and they were told that their name is on the list of the medical referrals. But when they arrived here, they were sent back and forth between hospitals and medical centers, telling it's not all of them, but telling some of them that it's not on the list. You have to go back to the Gaza Strip and start the procedures from scratch. And some of children as well. One of these children, for instance, had the permit, but none of his parents had a permit. And this is insane, because a child cannot go by themselves, let alone being a sick child, traveling from one territory to another by themselves. And this is an obstacle. This is a real obstacle for Palestinians, including children in the Gaza Strip, because we are in 2022. I mean, the medical treatment is there. It's that these children cannot have access to it. It is there, but the procedures and the complications cannot make them have access to it. And this really needs to be stopped. The majority of children either have one type of cancer, a heart disease, or kidney failure. And through the process where they wait for the permit, they suffer because it's very painful for them. And these are only 3 children who died this year. These are only 3 children of so many children and so many Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip who need the treatment that is not available in the Gaza Strip. And it's very hard for them to get it outside the strip. Another thing the Palestinians have to deal with is the power outages. And so in Gaza, people have the power for a certain amount of hours, and then it cuts, and then it comes again. And this sometimes leads to that people use candles to light their house in the evening. And this doesn't only mean that they light a candle and this is it. It can end up in casualties where the candle falls and then the whole house catches on fire. Some children die. Some children have to encounter and have to deal with a permanent injury or, burn in their skin. And this can, of course, reform their future. So the blockade, adding to this, it means restriction of movement. And this really reforms the future of the Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip. because if someone is in their high school, in their last grade in the school, and they wish to continue their studies abroad, it is super hard for them to go abroad. And then they have to reform the whole future. They reform their dreams, and they have to, study what is available in the Gaza Strip. Another thing Palestinian children have to encounter is the repeated Israeli military offensives on the Strip. Last one was this year. It lasted for 3 days, and it resulted in the killing of 17 Palestinian children. These are 16 of the 17 children. Last year, 60 Palestinian children were killed at the hands of the Israeli forces. So the shelling in these Israeli military offensives are indiscriminate. Children are usually in their house, and their houses are being shelled. So when we talk about these children as well, I always like to remind people who listen to us that these children are not only numbers. They have families who love them. They had dreams. They wanted to become something. I should point out that at least 11 of the children who were killed last year were receiving psychosocial support in order to get over the trauma they have developed as a result of the previous offensives. So the offensive doesn't only mean killing people. It means that their houses are being shelled, so they are left without shelter. And sometimes it takes very long for the families to rebuild their houses. It means the loss of a family member. It means permanent injuries. Children sometimes lose one of their limbs, lose their eyes, get serious injuries that they have to deal with for the rest of their lives. And the scariest part is that the majority of Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip, as a result of the offensives, are traumatized and depressed. So at least 80% of the children there suffer depression, and a lot of them have suicidal thoughts. When we talk to children after the offensives, the majority of them share the same symptoms. They are afraid of any noise. They are afraid of the darkness, and they also suffer bedwetting. So the psychological effect of these offensives are very huge on the Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip. So this is a school. This is a school run by the UNRWA, where people shelter usually. And this is a school that was affected by the shelling, by the airstrike, by the Israeli airstrikes. And these literally how Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip are. When it comes to the West Bank, the type of violations are kind of different. So there is no military offensives, but people or children encounter different type of violations. And I'm gonna start with the disruption of education. There are certain areas in the West Bank where there is a permanent presence of Israeli forces near schools. So the students, and these students can be in the first grade or the second grade. So we're talking about 6 years, 7 years children who have to pass through the checkpoint on daily basis on their way to the school and on their way back home. And this is very pressuring for these children. So a lot of children, when they are a little bit older, like in their 8th grade, for instance, they consider dropping out of school because they don't want to go through this hustle on daily basis. But it's not only checkpoints, and this is a photo of a checkpoint, but it's not only checkpoints. Sometimes in certain areas, Israeli forces go raid the schools to detain one of the children, for instance, one of the school students. And on that day, the principal makes sure to send everyone back to their home in order to make sure everyone is safe. So the whole educational process is disrupted on that day. And this can happen really like a lot of times, so many times. Sometimes Israeli forces throw tear gas canisters at schools, inside the school, or sometimes at the pupils when they are leaving the schools to their house. Another type of violation is settler violence, and this can happen also to disrupt education. There are certain areas where I mentioned a bit ago, settlers can be on the road harassing children on their way to their schools, sometimes verbally, sometimes they intimidate them. And usually these settlers go by groups and they are protected by Israeli forces. Israeli settlers do not, of course, do not only intimidate children, but usually they would go in groups, harass people moving from one city to another. They would go in groups, they would throw stones at the cars, they would pepper spray people. This year, there was a video that went viral of an infant who was pepper sprayed by Israeli settlers. So Israeli settlers can use stones, they are armed, and they are protected by Israeli forces, and they are really scary for children because you wouldn't feel safe. So it's not only on roads. Sometimes they, for instance, like this period of the year where Palestinians do the olive harvest, they would go harass people while they are harvesting their lands, while they are harvesting their olives. They would harass them, they shoot, they again throw stones at them. And sometimes when there is a village when there is a settlement that is located near a village, they would raid and storm the village in the middle of the night, break the windows of these houses, intimidate people, and scare children who could be also infant or toddlers. Also, physical beatings are also common when settlers are, harassing Palestinians. This is a school in a village that was set on fire by Israeli settlers. So they would also, set things on fire. They would write inciting statements to humiliate people, especially on churches or mosques or schools, about Arabs in general. This child we documented this year, his name is Tariq. He was kidnapped by Israeli settlers. He was actually hanging out with his friends near an evacuated settlement. And a group of settlers came by their car. His friends managed to flee, but they caught him and they put him on the front, on top of the front of the car, and they drove inside the evacuated settlement, where they hung him up by his arms on a tree and started literally physically violating this child, beating him up, using a taser until he lost his consciousness. And then when the Israeli side knew and told the Palestinian side, his uncle came to pick him up in an ambulance. He was literally passing out. He woke up, he saw his uncle, and he thought he was a settler. He passed out again. So it is not only the physical violence that he had to encounter and endure, but also the psychological impact on him. Another type of violation is excessive use of force, and this could, in the Gaza Strip, it can result in injuries or fatalities. And this happened when the Israeli forces raid an area to do a detention campaign, or during demonstrations. And the injuries can happen when Israeli forces use live ammunition, rubber-coated steel bullets, pepper spray, or even use children as a human shield. And this year, we also documented a case of a child. She was a girl. She was used as a human shield for 2 hours. She was scared for her life, and she was begging them to let her go, but they kept her for a whole 2 hours in front of their military jeep. This is a photo of a child who lost his eye. And the injuries of these children can be permanent. So they literally lose one of their limbs or their sight, their eyes. And it again reforms their future, because some of these children, for instance, have the hobby of football playing, and they wanted to be, football players, but then they were shot in the knee and they had to have their, leg amputated. The fatalities happen in the same way. And Israeli forces, this year, we documented the cases of 31 Palestinian children who were killed in the West Bank with live ammunition by Israeli forces. And this is an insanely huge number. We're talking about the 31 Palestinian child. This is one of the children that were killed this year. And again, we don't say 31 Palestinian children as numbers. This is his family and friends grieving him. Okay, so back to the point that Omar mentioned in the beginning and the military detention. So through our work, we focus on military detention. And I'm going to tell you that, I have to tell you that each year between Israeli forces detain, arrest, and prosecute between 500 to 700 Palestinian children each year, from 500 to 700. And this is an insanely huge number. And if you take a look at the charges against these children, the majority of them are charged with stone throwing. So I'm gonna take you in a journey of any child who would get arrested. But before that, I'm gonna tell you the fact that since 1967, back when Israel occupied the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, it started applying its military legal system in this territory. But at the same time, they started transferring illegal Israeli settlers in the same territory. And these settlers are not, what applies to them is not the military legal system, but rather the civilian legal system. So usually you would say people in one territory, what applies to them is one legal system, but this is not the case. So in here, it's not where you live, it's what your nationality is. So Palestinian children, what applies to them is the Israeli military system. And if I want to take you in a journey of one of these children, so I'm going to start, so they go in stages. The first one is the detention. So the majority of the arrest happens during the night, and this can be anywhere from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. And this is usually a time where the child is sleeping. The Israeli forces would come to the doors, aggressively knock on the door and wake everyone up. They ask them for their IDs, and when they know that this is the child they want, they tell them, we are arresting you. But the first thing is, this child is sleep deprived. Israeli forces do not inform them of why they are being arrested or where they are being taken to. So they tell them, go get dressed. While the child is getting dressed, Israeli forces lock the family in a separate room. And this happens in order to prevent any potential resistance or any potential protection of the child. So when the child is ready, they are immediately handcuffed and blindfolded. So they are sleep deprived, handcuffed, blindfolded, not knowing what's gonna happen to them, not knowing what is happening right now, and not feeling anyone of their family present beside them. And a lot of children told us that this was one of the hardest times for them because it has a huge psychological effect on them, because at that point they even felt that their home is not even safe anymore. So after that, they are not giving an arrest warrant, of course. After that, children are transferred into an interrogation center. And this journey from their house to the interrogation center can take anywhere from several minutes to several hours. The majority of children they are basically transferred in a military vehicle, and the majority of them are put on the metal floor of the military vehicle, regardless of the weather, regardless of how long the journey is. At that time, the child is bound, blindfolded, handcuffed, surrounded with Israeli soldiers, not knowing where they are, not knowing where they are taken, and not knowing what's happening. And at the same time, they are physically and verbally abused. So Israeli soldiers would kick them, would beat them, would humiliate them with words about their religion, about their mothers, about themselves. One of the children that we reported about told us that he was leaning, they made him sit, and he was leaning on something. And at a certain point, of course, he is blindfolded, he was about to fall. And then he figured out they made him lean on the rear door of the military vehicle. And at a certain point in the middle of the road, one of the soldiers decided to kick the door that the child was leaning on, and he was about to fall, but they grabbed him. So this could be a way of intimidating these children. This is just one way. When the child arrived to the interrogation center, they wait for lengthy hours outside, regardless of the weather. During that time, they are denied access to toilet, they are denied food and water, and still they are not informed of why they are here. Before the interrogation, they have to be medically examined, but these examinations are very general, because sometimes even the children report to the doctor that they have sustained injuries during the arrest, but these complaints are usually ignored. When the interrogation comes, the only right the Palestinian children are informed of is the pre-interrogation legal consultation. So the interrogator would come and tell the child, you have the right to call a lawyer to have a pre-interrogation legal consultation. So for Palestinian children, this happens over the phone. It's very short, it's over the phone. Children do not feel very comfortable sharing what happened over the phone. So we found that it's really not very useful for these children. They have to have the legal consultation in person, because Palestinian children inside the interrogation, they don't have the right to have one of the family members in the interrogation, or an attorney inside the interrogation with them. So they are alone inside the interrogation room. And this could be the hardest part of the detention and the arrest process, because during this time, we're talking about a child who could be 12 years old, because according to the Israeli military legal system, a child who's 12 years old can be prosecuted. So we're talking about a child who could be 12 years old versus a very, very well-trained adult, an interrogator. And these interrogators would use psychological methods in order to pressure on the children to confess. So they would threaten them that they would demolish their house if they didn't confess. They would threaten them to arrest one of their family members, to stop a working permit of one of their parents if they work inside Israel. And at that point, the child is alone and scared, and the majority of them confess under pressure, sometimes for things they have not committed. And we're talking about an interrogation. Inside the interrogation, also physical abuse happens, but we're talking about general interrogation. If the accusation were more serious, like weapon possession or affiliation with a certain political group, these children go in harsher ways of interrogation. They would be put in solitary confinement. And solitary confinement is basically a very small room, 2.5 by 2.5. There is one concrete bed. There is one blanket, only one blanket, regardless of the weather, regardless of how many times these children ask for another blanket. There is one pillow, and they are smelly. The majority of children reported to us that they were smelly. Usually the wall is gray and very rough, so the child cannot lean on them. And there is a very annoying yellow light that is lit 24/7, so it's hard for these children to fall asleep. And also the toilet is in the same room. It's literally next to the bed. And the worst part of these are very hard and harsh. You know, This is a very hard situation for a child, but the worst part is that they do not have any human contact whatsoever except with the interrogator. So the child has a very long time by themselves in a very harsh conditions. And this is when children start to reflect on what is happening, start to reflect on what's going to happen to them, on what's going to happen to their families. And they finally want to just get out of there, and they would confess on anything. A lot of children, a lot of adults also who are put in solitary confinement, but we're talking about children. So a lot of children start to create and develop hallucination and delusions. And a lot of them also develop suicidal thoughts. And these do not end when people are out of solitary confinement. It continues with them even when they are released. So the point of putting these children under this pressure is to obtain a confession from them that will be used against them in the Israeli court. And Israeli military courts do not exclude those confessions that are taken under pressure. So when the interrogator fails to obtain a confession from these children, they put them under administrative detention. And an administrative detention is basically a detention without charges or trial. So not the child nor their attorney know what are the charges against this child, and it can be issued for 6 months. And these 6 months can be renewed indefinitely. So let's say a child was put under administrative detention, and on the day they have to be released, the judge can issue a renewal of the detention. And this constitutes as torture, as well as solitary confinement constitutes as torture, because the uncertainty these children have to live is very hard for them psychologically. So after the interrogation, Palestinian children have to appear before the judge, and the periods vary depending on their age. Inside the courtroom, it's the first time they see their attorney. It's the first time they see their families. There is no physical contact. Of course, they would just wave at each other. They appear in Shabas. It's the brown uniform of the presence. And the hearings happen in Hebrew. Usually this is a language not the child nor the family understands. And there is an interpretation, but it usually fails to give full comprehensive translation to what is really going on. So the attorney has to, explain after the session. So let's say a child was convicted. And let me tell you, the conviction rates in the Israeli military court system is 99%. Let's say a child was, convicted and they have to go to the jail, to the prison. They would go to one of 3 prisons with juvenile sections. 2 of these prisons are located inside Israel. One is located in the West Bank, it's Ufar, and transferring Palestinians, including children, transferring an occupied population to the occupying territory is considered a war crime. Yet Israel is still doing this to Palestinians, including children, because it literally controls their life when they are out of their territories, including family visitation. So inside the prison, when the families wish to visit their children, they have to apply to a permit through the ICRC. It usually takes up to 3 months until it is denied or approved by the Israeli authorities. On the visitation day, the travel is very, very long and tiring for the families, but still they spend sometimes a whole day on the way to see their children. They wait for lengthy hours outside, regardless of the weather. A lot of children reported to us that on this day, even though they're when the visitation happens, so after they wait for lengthy hours, families go to see their children. The visit happens through a glass barrier, so they cannot hug or shake hands with each other. It happens for a maximum of 45 minutes. It's over the phone because it's through a glass barrier. But children reported to us that they made sure they looked their best. They looked fresh because they're seeing their family, they're talking to their family. Families can take a present for their children. Of course, it is scanned through the system and it shouldn't have any political symbol. Inside the prison, children are not only deprived of their liberty, but they are deprived of so many things, including right to education and right to health. So if a child needs a certain specific treatment, it is not given to them fully or completely. Also inside the prison, the Israeli authorities decided that Palestinian children can only study Hebrew, Arabic, and simple calculus because any other subject would be considered a threat against the prison security. But even though these are the topics that the children can study, a lot of them reported to us that they were really, really useless because they are subject they already studied. So they are literally for younger generations. So we're not only talking about them being deprived of their liberty, but of so many things. And that's why even when they are out of the prison, they need field assistance, especially psychosocial support, because a lot of them don't wish to continue their studies because they are way behind their colleagues. A lot of them consider dropping out of school. It takes a lot of time for so many of them to reintegrate with their communities, with their families, and with their friends. And the very sad part is when you talk to these children and you would ask them, they say it is okay, but when you talk to their families, they would tell you how different they are. It's like they are not the same person after they experience this. And so this is briefly their situation. I'm gonna show you a video. Rayan will play a video, but I'm gonna tell you that the reason behind all of this, the reason behind arresting these children and prosecuting them is mainly to control the whole Palestinian population. Before Rayan plays the video, can I go through the slides just for the numbers? So this is a photo of a child who was obviously detained in the daytime. So as you see, they are immediately blindfolded and handcuffed. So on the transfer, the majority of them are hand-tied and blindfolded. They are subject to physical violence and verbal abuse, of course, especially humiliation and intimidation. The majority are on the metal floor. They are unlawfully transferred to prisons inside Israel. They do not have access to counsel prior to the interrogation. They are not properly informed of their rights when it comes to the interrogation, the majority of the Palestinian children. This is how they appear in the hearing sessions in the black and the brown uniform. Okay. Can we play the video?
اول شيء بقيت افكر كيف بدي اطلع، كيف بدي امشي ايامي. تحسك انك لما بقيت جوا بقيت منعزل عن العالم الخارجي تماما. عندك خوف انك يعني تنسجن كمان مره ولا كيف؟ زي شو المشكله الرئيسيه؟ خط 60 انه بس كيف تقطع وتفوت جوا المخيم، لانه عند خط 60 هم ملك الشارع. انا عبيد اكرم جوابره، مخيم العروب، شمال الخليل. عمري تقريبا 15 سنة وبحب أطبخ. عندك مخيم العروب كله دور صغيرة وعدد الأفراد اللي فيها كبير كثير ومساحة الدور صغيرة، وحتى إنه الشباك مثلا بفتح على شباك جارك، يعني الحيط في الحيط زي ما يسموها. وعندك طرق صغيرة، وعندك برضو الناس فيها كثير طيبين، كثير مناح جدعان، بوقفوا معك في المشاكل. فيش حياة الأطفال مأساوية، لا في ألعاب زي العالم، لا في حرية. تم اعتقالي مرتين من قبل الاحتلال. عندي كانت التجربة الأولى مأساوية جدا، حتى كنت أنا ماشي أروح على الدكان أشتري، اعتقلوني. لما اعتقلوني في مركز التحقيق حطوا لي كلبش بلاستيك، كلبشتين نفس الشيء في نفس الإيد، حتى كان دقيق ما بقدرش أحرك إيدي لا لفوق ولا لتحت. كان حطوا لي عصب خميلة، وحتى حطوها لمنخار يعني ما قدرتش أتنفس بصعوبة. أنت عارف لما تمشي أنت مش شايف إشي، طريق غريب، ضلك ماشي وضلك في شيء دايخ وخايف ومتردد. حتى هم كانوا مثلا يقول لي انزل الدرج، ما بقاش في درج، يقول ارفع رجلك خلوني اقع. بس طبعا كان ما يضربش الا على المناطق الغير حساسه، حتى ما تشهدش ضدهم او تثبتش اشاره ضدهم. صارت اشياء كثير لما وقفت في السجن وروحت شفت اشياء كثير متغيره. لما رجعت كانت المواد كلها متراكمه جدا علي، حتى انه ما عرفتش لا اختار لا هذا ولا هذا.
بدك هاي مثلا ترتبها شويه هيك، لان في عنا انواع يتم تشتيلها بالبذور، في عنا انواع بالفسائل بالعقل، كويس. هاي مثلا نوع من انواع النبات يتم تشتيله ايش من خلال النبت نفسه. في عنا التكاثر الجنسي وفي عنا التكاثر اللا جنسي، كويس.
فرحت على الصناعيه عشان المواد برضو كانت المواد متراكمه جدا، وعملوا لي امتحانات شهرين فتغلبت كثير. كنت كل يوم بقيت اقرا كل كتاب.
لما تشعل شو بتعمل؟ تبعد ايدك 2 ميلي،
انه اجيب علامات عاليه، انه اثبت وجود، انه ما راحش تعبكم وهيك، ما راحش انكم قبلتوني، راح تاثر علي في السجن.
بس.
أنا رشيد عرار، المرشد المهني لمدرسة العروب الزراعية. وزي ما احنا شايفين هون هذا الشارع شارع 60 اللي بمر منه كثير من المستوطنين اللي بيعملوا لنا إشكالية كبيرة في هذا المكان، لأنه احنا موجودين على
ايش هذا الصوت؟
هذا الجرس. احنا موجودين على منطقة احتكاك بيؤدي لانه مرات يصير في اعتداءات من قبل قوات الاحتلال على الاطفال، اعتقالات، مداهمات للمدرسة. الأطفال أول ما بيجوا سواء كان معتقل قبل ما يجي عنا أو بيتم اعتقاله عنا وبعدين بيلتحق بالمدرسة، بنجد إنه في صعوبة أثناء دمجه مع الطلاب. يعني مش بالسهل إنه يتفاعل، مش بالسهل إنه يبني علاقات، مش بالسهل إنه يبني صداقات. مرات عنده ردات فعل مش محسوبة. هذا الموضوع بنشتغل عليه على إنه نعيده لتوازنه، نعيده لإنه يرجع يندمج مع الأطفال، يبني علاقات، ينتظم بالمدرسة، يتخلص من بعض السلوكيات اللي شوي بتأثر عليه من ناحية سلبية.
بلشت افكر ليش احنا غير عن اطفال العالم، ليش بس تعيين فلسطين بروحوا بتسجلوا اعمارهم صغيره وبندهكوا في الحياه، وهم غادي مبسوطين بروحوا على جيم، على كره سله، على تدريبات، عندهم امكانيات كثير احسن منا. كنت اقارن كيف ليش هم هيك واحنا هيك. هذا السؤال لحد الان ما حدا جاوبنا عليه. ليش رحت الزراعة الكلية غاد؟
نباتي وعشان الحيواني والنفع علاقات هذول.
أنا تعرف ليش رحت؟ عشان أشهد المواد العلمية فيزياء وكيمياء وأحياء صعوبات
صعوبات كثير
أنا شرطت منهم ومنيح الزراعة يعني وظيفة محترمة ورا مكتب وتشتغل لحالك وقاد نفسك أنا هذا الشيء اللي بحبه بدك تكون ورا مكتب بعدين يداوم عليك سوي هيك سوي هيك تملك نفسك أحسن
صحيح. لما كنا جوا بس نفكر بس يوم نطلع محكمة عشان هيك نضيع وقت
الزراعة
محكمة الزراعة
قدر أشوف ولاد بلدنا قدر البصر
ولاد بلدنا ويوم الزيارات وهيك يوم الزيارة تشوف أهلك هاي الأشياء المنيحة في السجن إنك
شيء منيح
شيء منيح هو بس في أشياء بتعلمك إنه
زي الصبر في الابتلاء
تصبر تنظم حالك
كنت مروط أنا بالسجن طبخ جوا شوف بدك تعرفه
بعرف
علمني الطبخ حبني الشاب وعلمني الطبخ وعندنا كان جابوا شيف من الأقسام الثانية إنه أطلع 3-2 معهم اسمه مساعد الطباخ فاشتغلنا معه وعلمني شغلة تعلمت مهارة الطبخ وتعلمت مهارة التعامل مع الناس الأدب الاحترام بحس حالي حر بس مش الحرية التامة عندك لازم أول شيء تتحرر عشان أحس حالي حر تماما بس برضه في عندك إنك حر تطلع وقت ما بدك تيجي وقت ما بدك في التاكسي تحكي ما بدك تزعم ما بدك كان عندك خلاص إرادة شخصية شو بدك تسوي أنا هذا كنت مفتقره جوا بس واحد مش متحررين كيف بدي أعيش الفرحة تمام 100% يعني حتى جزء من الفرحة اكتملت
Okay, this was Ubaida. Before we filmed this video with him, he was arrested for 2 times, and then for a 3rd time after we filmed with him. And as you saw, he was eager to learn something. He had dreams to become a professional. He even picked what kind of profession he wanted because he didn't want to feel controlled or in the office. Ubaida last year was participating in a peaceful demonstration in solidarity with what was happening in Sheikh Jarrah, and he was shot in the chest by Israeli forces with live ammunition. And he was left for 30 minutes before Israeli forces allowed the ambulance to reach to Ubaida. And as a result of that, he kept bleeding until he was killed. So he was killed just a few weeks before he turned 18. As a child, he had to endure these types of violations that ended up with his killing. And he was also killed a few weeks before he graduated his vocational school. And this, Ubaida is just one of so many children who encounter and endure these violations. Probably I said a lot of information, a lot of details, but I promise you this is very, very briefed compared to what these children have to go through.
Thank you very much, Manar, for all of the important work that you're doing and for sharing with us today. I'm sure everyone is overwhelmed. I mean, most of our audience are very much well aware of what's happening here in the occupied territories and know, I mean, the Palestinian narrative very well. But I mean, we can all, I mean, it is when children suffer, it's very difficult. We have many questions. I don't think we're going to be able to go through them all, but and I will do it by order as soon as I mean it's first come first serve, because we'll try just to answer maybe like 3 questions before we end this meeting, because we'd like to finish at 7 in the coming 5 minutes. So the shorter the answers, the better. You need to expand, please do. When the Israeli army broke into your offices, did you lose any material?
Material in what way you mean? In what sense? Because they took.
I mean, did they steal like paper documentation?
Of course, yes, they did. We have them backed up, but still, it's folders and files of the clients where they have the affidavits of the children. either witnesses, eyewitnesses, or children who are detained.
You mentioned about people from Gaza requesting permits to go into, I mean, it is to come for treatment, children. Do Palestinians have to pay for these permits?
As far as I know, it's not for the permit, but Palestinians have to, they have to carry a, like, they have to pay a certain amount of the treatment, but it's not the permit as far as I know.
So today there was a report on Haaretz that a 16-year-old young boy was shot and killed for raising a Palestinian flag. Do you have more details about this case?
About, I don't know if I know the name because today, for instance, we documented the killing of a girl, but it's not a boy. It wasn't a boy. So if I know the case, of course, and all of the cases that we document, especially when it comes to killing, are on our website with details. So we collect the affidavits and we gather everything and we write a news alert. So if you go to dci-palestine.org, you will find all the news alerts about the killing incidents.
There's a question that there's so much trauma doing the work that you're doing as staff people, helping children and so on. Do you as staff people take, do you get psychological support?
Yes, part of what DCI is giving to its staff is supervision, psychological supervision, especially for the documentation unit that have to sometimes see a very traumatizing scenes, you know, like a corpse of a child, who collect data. In general, whoever wants or needs this assistance, it is there. There is a professional person that DCI, you know, provides for the staff.
Before the meeting started, we were joking, me and you, Manar. But I mean, it's doing the work that you're doing for an organization that is seen illegal by Israel, the different challenges. How does your family and your friends, do they encourage you doing this work, or they try to call you, encourage you to leave this job?
No, it is our duty as Palestinians to do this work because it is important. It is an important work. Of course, they are concerned. People who love us are concerned about us, but at a certain point there is encouragement because what we do is very important. It's from Palestinian people to Palestinian people, and we're one community, so we have to continue this regardless. And regardless of the pressure, of the real psychological pressure, because of mainly the uncertainty of where are we going.
But I am, as Palestinian females also, there's maybe the society puts extra pressure on you. Do you face this, or your family is very supportive?
No, not really, no.
I mean, it's very courageous, and we admire this work.
Thank you.
Aren't the confessions read to them in Hebrew? So do they read the testimonies in Hebrew? So like, do they know what they're signing, or do they like read it in Arabic and they sign?
So usually what is written, it's written in Hebrew, but they have to translate for the children what is written there. The children have to know what is there, but it is in Hebrew. Yes, true. So sometimes children are not sure if what is said is literally what is written.
And yeah, I know. Beth has shared that Ahed Tamimi, she has a new book. They called me a lioness. It's an excellent book. Many people have already read it. Maybe we will invite her to speak about her book. But if you haven't read it or got it, please do. How has the Israeli government declaration of defense of children in Palestine as a terrorist organization affected your work? Are you able to raise money to run your programs? Are you facing challenges? Are you able to travel abroad the country as staff people, attend meetings internationally?
We are so far able to travel, but as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's the uncertainty. We are able to travel now. We don't know when is that gonna stop, when we are gonna get banned. But regarding the donation and the funds, we are still receiving them, and we're receiving a lot of support since day one. So we're keeping the momentum. Our partners are keeping the momentum. So the funds wise and the donation wise, it's still happening. We didn't face an issue in this, but we don't know when it's going to be harder to transfer the money, for instance. So yes, again, it's the uncertainty. We as well receive support from international bodies, international treaties. So it didn't really affect the international attention because Israel is failing to give evidence. But what we need now, I think it is enough to talk about the evidence, because it's obviously there is no evidence. There should be a concrete action from the international community. Stop this, so we can continue our work, because obviously there is no evidence. And if they want to keep talking about the evidence, at least put a deadline, like if there is no evidence in this day, on this date, then all of the accusation is false. And we received this support actually from 9 EU state members before the raid. And we were very optimistic that they did a statement and they said, we're supporting these organizations because Israel is failing to give evidence. But a few weeks later, Israel raided the offices. So what we need is concrete actions.
Yes, it's very sad how even European countries around the world, I mean, they don't back their words by action. It's very sad. Manar, another question. Is it possible to get your slides circulated? Because some of the people here are they themselves activists and leaders, and they would like to have this the PowerPoint presentation to show it in their own communities, churches, and so on. It's possible you will send it to us?
Yes, sure. I will send it to you and you can circulate it.
There's more questions, but I'm sure we will. We'd love to host you again, Manar. Unfortunately, the time is out. Please make noise wherever you are for DCI and for the important work they're doing. I mean, it's what should be illegal is harassing and abusing children, not defending children. So keep up the good work. We hold you in our thoughts and in our prayers. It's not, I mean, it is Israel definitely continues to violate human rights, international law, and we should hold them accountable as even if our governments, I mean, we don't have a government in Palestine. We have, but it's another story. But you have your own governments, and they are, you should hold them accountable. Thank you, Manar. Thank you all. Next week, we hope to see you again. We have an excellent speaker, like always, and we're looking at you, which you'll hear soon in the newsletter.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the kind words in the chat. I'm reading them. Thank you a lot. Thanks, Omar.
Thank you, Manar. Take care and stay strong.
Bye.
Bye, مع السلامة.